views and opinions expressed on the following program are those of the hosts and guests, and not necessarily those of the staff or management of alltalkradio.net.
Standing at the door, looking back at life as it's been before, holding on to things that might have been, knowing that this day will never come again, as my spirits guide.
Hi there, this is Lainey Bristow, and welcome. You're watching and listening to Soul Chat, and my co-host today is Kara Keating.
Hello.
Yeah, and you are with?
The Soul Sanctuary, which is an interfaith center here in Las Vegas.
Right. We're going to talk today about, well, if anybody saw the title, Breaking Up is Hard to Do. It just popped right through my head. And it's really about the transformational journey that happens when you're going through some kind of relationship change. And it doesn't have to necessarily be a marriage or a romantic partnership, although it can. That's usually what everybody thinks of.
Yes.
But it's about breaking a relationship. I mean, I have a friend that's been going through quite a change for the last 2 years because she suddenly lost her job.
Oh, wow.
So that relationship.
To her, yes, her
and
career and her
that really
employment.
was the biggest relationship in her life. So if you look at the relationship that you are most involved with, that takes up most of your time and most of the headspace that you've got and the heart space that you've got.
Absolutely,
you know? Yeah,
absolutely.
If you'd like to call in, we're at 702-609-7626. And if you're on Skype, it's All Talk Radio, one word. So feel free to call in if you got some questions. Everybody's had a breakup.
Absolutely.
Of some kind. Even
Absolutely.
somebody says, well, I never had a date in my life. If you had a job and you lost a job, anytime you have to move from one living situation to another situation, you're breaking up somehow. And it's hard. People, as human beings, I don't think we like change.
Not really.
No, I don't think so. But before we do that, it's time for that favorite segment, and I've got people asking me about it all the time. They say, how do you keep coming up with stuff for this? And it's, what did I learn about myself this week? And every day something happens. Every day something happens. You can learn about yourself.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And I put it as you, not meaning you, Kara, but I mean everybody.
No, I'm learning every day.
Everybody. Even on the smallest things. Even on the smallest things. Yesterday, I had a situation where I woke up feeling really, really drug out because I had a really intense 3-hour healing. I mean, it started at 1 and it ended at 4. And spiritual healing, people say, well, you're not climbing anything, but it takes a lot of work.
Yes.
It takes a lot of work and a lot of energy to stay in balance. So I woke up with feeling like somebody had pulled my brain apart. I just it was a funny kind of headache. And I went to Spiritus Reiki Center. They have a crystal bed there that you can lay on, which is really, it's good.
I got to take a look at that the other night. It's beautiful.
I got to lay on it with the music going and everything. And so Wayne Hildebrand said, come on down and I'll help you put your head back together. So I went down, and it was interesting because I went on a journey. Spirit took me on a journey. And in that journey, I saw, and I counted them up afterwards, and I had a half an hour to myself. In my life, there have been about 18 significant people who have crossed over. And I tend to be one of those people that you want me around in a crisis because of growing up with my sister who had convulsions, and I would be left alone with her. You have to think on your feet. So I really grew up in the situation where I always had to be thinking.
Okay.
And this is what I got to do now. And I put my own stuff behind me. That's not what I learned about. I've known that for a long time. What this journey happened when I was on this table is all of these people came to me in this journey one by one. And basically it was like putting the period on the end of the sentence. And it was a thing about, I just realized how much, and some of them were pretty contentious. Some of them were situations that the last time I saw them wasn't good.
Yeah.
But I realized even in the moments that it wasn't good, it was good.
Yeah.
Even the smallest things. which led me to looking at the smallest things that happen every day.
Mm-hmm.
And I woke up this morning, and of course we hear about the latest, what is it, who was it, in the Mediterranean, somebody captured a ship. Iran captured a ship from, And at first they reported it was 34 U.S. sailors, and then it's not. It's 34 people on board, but they weren't U.S. citizens. And so you read that, and then I read about Nepal, who the numbers. We're in a situation there where the numbers just keep growing and growing and growing, and all of these things that are happening. And it suddenly dawned on me, and some of you who are on my Facebook page saw it. It just dawned on me. I am not going to put anger and frustration into the world. It's already happening anyway.
Yeah.
And so I started looking at the small things that happened. Even when the dog packed out something that she shouldn't have packed out, even though she was barking when she shouldn't have been. What's the flip side of that situation? So she's barking at the neighbor. Oh my gosh, I would miss that bark if that wasn't there. So I started really looking at the smallest things and realizing that all the worry that I do, and I do it like everybody else, when I worry I don't get things done, when you get back far enough and look at it, it really doesn't matter.
Yeah.
It'll happen.
I agree.
My ex-husband used to have a thing where he would have this long table in front of him, and he would stack up mail as it would come under projects that he was doing, and it just kept stacking. And finally one day I went in and I said, "What are you doing with this?" And he goes, "Oh, I just keep stacking it up, and if it finally falls off the edge, it's not important anymore."
Oh, that's one way to look at it.
And it is, he'd be right. And I've looked at that. So what I learned about myself is I'm still looking too much at the details, and I still can focus on what's wrong instead of what's right.
Interesting.
And peace comes with what's right.
Peace comes with what's right.
That's right. How about you?
Kind of along the same things, but the little things that I needed to pay attention to this week are actually my internal guidance in my internal life. So there's a lot of things that can slough away, but you're being in alignment with your true self and being in alignment with who you are and speaking from your truth and having the courage to voice those pieces.
And hold on to it.
And hold on to those pieces
tough.
and acknowledge those
That's
pieces.
That's tough.
Those were the lessons that I was learning this week, because what ends up happening for me is I get into the stress and I get into the worry when I ignore my own inner voice incrementally. And it builds into something that's really big. And then at some juncture it has to blow, whether it's into stress, whether it's into workaholism, whether it's into, other parts of my life or my relationships. If I'm not authentic in the moment, it builds into an energy that I must release at some point, and usually that comes out as stress and as worry in my life.
And I found something, and I posted it on. I had a day today. I don't normally post that much. I maybe once a day if I'm lucky. Today I found 2 or 3 gems, and one of them is worry is just a waste of energy. It just it takes you away from the moment. It robs you of happiness. It robs you of joy, and you don't get anything done anyway because you're stuck in your head.
Yeah, I agree. My favorite quote on worry is, "It's like a rocking chair, gives you something to do but doesn't get you anywhere." Yeah,
I think I've been rocking a lot. I think so.
Me too.
Well, that's a perfect segue into what we were going to talk about. If some of you are turning in, because we did have it set up to do the sacred masculine, which is a fascinating topic, and I really want to focus it. And Reverend Mark Paul Rupert, he's sitting in the studio here. But we're not going to talk about that today. We're going to do it down the road. I really want to focus on it in a good way. I didn't have time to read the book. I didn't have time. I got into it, and it's something that I think needs a lot of attention. So we're going to do it down the road. Yeah, so Kara very kindly came in, and I said, let's talk about something that we both know a lot about, and it's breaking up is hard to do.
Absolutely.
I've been through it, at least in relationships that I determine are significant for me, at least 3 times, and you're kind of coming out of one right now.
I'm coming out of a relationship, just finished a divorce.
So if any of you out there have relationships that you've had to leave behind, or you feel you have unfinished business, or you have any questions, feel free to call in. And again, that number is 702-609-7626, or Skype, All Talk Radio, one word. So, breaking up. Let's go back to when we decide that we're actually going to do that. It's a process. It's not easy.
It's not overnight. Definitely not overnight.
No. I think from the moment that I knew I was going to get a divorce, it was probably 6 years before I finally could get the wherewithal to get myself together to make that step.
Yes.
And somebody had told me, once you take the first step, the rest of it all just kind of falls into place. And that's pretty much my experience.
Me too. But making that initial decision, that initial choice,
Yeah.
well, that was the hardest thing to do.
Yeah. And taking the step and knowing what that step is.
Mm-hmm.
For me, it was actually, it wasn't getting the apartment. It wasn't, because I'm the one who left. It wasn't, I had set up a mailbox. I did all that thing that the lawyers tell you to do,
Mm-hmm.
you know, set this up and credit and all that stuff. It was actually looking at him and saying, I'm gone.
Mm-hmm.
That was, and even after many sessions of counseling,
Yeah.
and it was still a stunner to him. He just did not see it coming.
I understand.
Yeah. So I think that's where it starts. And then it really is a journey of transformation.
Yeah.
It really is a journey of becoming, for me, becoming more of who I am at my core, who I really am, and not
Yeah.
compromising. Where are you with that right now?
Well, I knew for the last 10 years that the marriage wasn't working. I had some health problems for about 7 of those last 10 years. So there was an aspect of me that was, just trying to get well, and Wiley wasn't dealing with the relationship.
Mm-hmm.
But once I got well, I don't know, something began to shift in me. And it's kind of that piece that I was talking about that I'm still learning this week, which is being in alignment to listening to that inner voice, to that true self. That when relationships take a lot of work, or you have to work really hard to communicate, or you have to change who you are to be in them, little by little, that takes away pieces of who you are and of your spirit and of who you've come here to be in the world. And so for me, it was a 20-year marriage. And so it was a slow, gradual letting go of who I was in order to be in that relationship. So in order to get out of that relationship, it was a slow, gradual anchoring back into my sense of who I am, my spirit, my soul. And then that's the piece of me that actually made the decision to leave.
Right. And I experience both men and women doing this, trying to figure out. Now, I will say I have seen a lot of men get in another relationship quicker than women do. Mm-hmm. And that's not an absolute, not at all. I certainly don't have a study to fall back on. Although I will say that I was talking to, at the time I understand I went through this in 2000, so I'm 14 years down the road on this process. Mm-hmm. I was talking to someone, a financial person, who was telling me that she would invariably see that usually, especially entrepreneurs, that the males would marry within a year. Wow. And the females, especially if they're financially independent, tended not to. And in the long run, they might get in a relationship, but they may not get married again.
Interesting.
And she had just noticed that. So don't take that as gospel. It is not a fine-tuned study. It is not anything you can nail on a wall and say, here's what it is. That's not what it is at all. But I think it's interesting. And I think that women, because that's the place where we can talk from,
yes,
is as women, I think our role is to make the family work and to raise the kids. And when you have kids, you have to give up your life to a certain degree.
Absolutely.
You do.
You do.
Just do. So the pattern gets set, and then you have to figure out, well, I'm going to do this. I remember when my oldest daughter was born, I was thinking, wow, 20 years, and then I get to do what I want again, you know? Mm-hmm. Now, that's not saying you can't be a good role model for your children, because you can, because they learn by watching you.
Absolutely.
Beyond anything that you say.
Yes.
Yes. It's not what you say that sticks with them, and they watch what you do like hawks, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So that transformational piece of a lot of women say, I don't even know who I am anymore. Because we've given it away. We've stepped to the side. We've done whatever it took to keep things going.
Absolutely,
yeah.
Absolutely. And the piece with the kids is what kept me in the marriage, as not just being ill, but also the kids. I mean, even 10 years ago when we had challenges and difficulties, it was, not wanting to break up my family, wanting to do everything in my power to keep, my children's lives stable. and to keep the the relationships as healthy as I possibly could. And and I agree with you that a lot of times women pick up that role, and then I've met a lot of women who play, do the double communication, work extra hard to make up for what's lacking in the marriage.
Now, I was married to a workaholic, so in a lot of ways I was married, but I was single. So I got to bring up both sides, both the masculine and the feminine, a lot. And I struggled with that. And I find that women, I believe, struggle with that because when he would finally get home, it was like, okay, now you can let down your guard. Well, there wasn't enough communication for me to trust that I was going to be able to let down my guard.
Exactly.
So now we're in that piece is when one person is standing in their own light and truly are standing in their own light from their heart, it allows the other person to do the same thing. Mm-hmm. So where does that get murky? Because it does. Life just, because things come up, and it just gets murky.
It does.
And then all of a sudden, here I was at that time I was 49. Nobody do the math out there. Anyway, I was 49, and how do I do this? I've always been in a relationship of some kind. Now, I went right back into one. Within a year, I was back in another one that lasted for 9 years, but I wasn't ready. I wasn't ready for that. I couldn't do it. Yeah, I needed that support from someone who absolutely adored me, which I loved because it hadn't happened for a while, so that was perfect.
Absolutely.
But the real work, I believe, started when that relationship ended. And then all of a sudden I finally was strong enough to really say, this is who I am. This is what I want to do. I couldn't do the work I'm doing now as a shamanic practitioner and be in the relationship I was in 14 years ago.
Yes.
It wasn't going to work. And in some ways it wasn't going to work with the other one that ended 5 years ago because I was still, it wasn't about him, it was about me. I was still compromising to make the thing run.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So for me, because I'm just coming out of the end of this, my focus has been on reconnecting, though, back within, reconnecting to my sense of myself, reconnecting to the things that I love to do. I mean, you saw this on Facebook. I just took a crazy trip across the country, drove through 14 states in 13 days. And
I was cheering all the way.
I
just thought, oh, that's perfect.
It's something that I never would have done in my marriage. I don't know why, but I would have asked permission to do it. And my spirit just needed to be free, and I followed my spirit instead of following what I should do, what I ought to do, what would be a responsible mother would do. I followed my spirit for a change and started basically focusing on reconnecting to myself. And one of the things that I'm very blessed with is that I have a group of people in my life who are supportive of that reconnection to my spirit. And so it makes it really easy for me at this juncture. 10 years ago, I didn't have that group of people. So as I wanted to be out of the relationship, the people around me were telling me all the reasons I shouldn't leave, all the reasons it would be bad for the kids, all the reasons it wouldn't work. My tribe this time, my people were, I love you, I see your light, and I support you. Listen to your own inner guidance.
And I have to say that if you look historically, what happens is we are at a time in history where that's more possible probably than it's been before. Because back in the 50s and 60s, when I was growing up, now my mom wasn't home. She worked with my dad, so she worked in a hardware store. But the Leave It to Beaver crowd, where mom stayed home and dad did the work, and he came home, and I believe that that's more of a fairy tale, even in itself.
Yes,
it didn't happen as much as people said. But where I'm going with this is it was harder to do what you're talking about for women. In general.
Yes.
Now is a perfect time because it's more accepted. Women are making more than they ever used to, although the glass ceiling is still there if you talk to some of them. It's still there. They still have to fight through it.
I agree.
But to be able to do that, but also spirituality is coming back. I mean, with the shift of 2012 and Neptune coming out of retrograde last year, and I felt it big time, but then it's prominent in my chart. And it's not that it's Neptune's fault. It's Neptune was just reflecting what I was doing. So with all of that spirituality coming in, all of a sudden we're back into the mid 1800s again when seances and spirituality was a big thing. It was popular. It is again. It's more accepted than it has ever been in this country.
I agree.
to do that.
I agree. Yeah.
And yet, we're probably more fractured. We don't have tribes. We're putting our tribes together. I'm glad you brought that up. We're putting our tribes together with our friends.
Yes, we are. We are.
Yeah.
And with our community, with the communities that we can plug into that really resonate with us.
Yeah. I was just talking with someone this afternoon. It's amazing how the circle that's forming, that I'm finding forming, that I'm part of, it's really spirit driven. It really feels like it. And I'm finding that there's just there's certain people that come up and I wish them well on their path, and I really care about who they are, and I really like this circle. The qualities of the circle that I find I want to have around me all the time.
Me too.
More so, and I never felt that was okay. Probably till about 5 years ago.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Why is that?
Just because of the way I had formed things. I mean, I was in a spot where I didn't see myself as the authority in my own life. Somebody else knew more than I did about me.
Got it.
You know, about what was good for me and how I need to do it. And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that I'm not ever going to be in a relationship again, because I am. But it's made up, I firmly believe, a friend told me a long time ago that from his point of view, a healthy relationship is made up of two healthy individuals.
I agree.
And that's what I want.
Mm.
You know, it's 100%, 100%. It's not 50-50.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, and then the other piece too for that, for me, as I'm, coming out of the relationship, is that in order to have a healthy relationship, I've got to start doing my inner work.
That's right.
I've got to heal from the things that I've learned from the marriage, heal from the anger, heal from, the ways that I compromised myself, but also re-articulate how to hold my voice, hold my spirit, be who I am in relationship to anybody I meet, not just in a romantic relationship, but in any instance, to not give away my power, not give away who I am.
To know what's right for me. It's like I can be one of the biggest mama bears in the world, and it's like with this show, it's on my back now. And I put it there, and so I'm real careful with it. And to stand up and say, this is how I want it done, right or wrong, this is what's going to happen. I mean, that's not something I would have done.
Yeah.
I was always known as being the one that was really direct and really moving forward, and if you wanted something done, hand it to me, and I'd come through like a bulldozer and make it happen. But this is different. This is I've been feeling like the last month, like I've got this taproot, like a sequoia that's just going down to Mother Earth. And
Beautiful.
Yeah, and it's not that it's immovable. It's just, I just know what I know. I know I have this more of a sense about who I am, which you're growing into. I mean, I've just in the short time I've known you, I've seen it happening.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely. But getting back to the community, I don't know that I could have done it if I didn't have people that helped me see my light. And then there's also, I don't want to brush over the fact that this has been actually a very long process.
Yes.
It's been, 10 years since I really knew I was unhappy. By 2011, I knew I really needed to shift my life into alignment, because absolutely everything wasn't a reflection of me. And so it's been since, 4 years now that I've really been incrementally, point by point, moving my life into alignment with my own spirit, my own soul, my own guidance, my own.
I think what's really important there is that you can do that inner work before you leave the relationship.
Absolutely.
It's not about the relationship, it's about doing your inner work. And then what happens, the outside does match the inside.
Absolutely.
And that's what was wrong with mine, is that it was, like I said, it was okay as long as I left myself at the bottom of the driveway before I got home.
Yeah.
And years of doing that. Now, you talked about health. I had my health issues too. And how's your health right now? Is it better?
It's a lot better. It's significantly better. But what's interesting, because I had a thyroid problem, but what was interesting to me is when I started actually walking my path. I mean, I had done all the things with the doctors, and I had done everything to heal. I had, adrenal fatigue and thyroid problems, and was in chronic fatigue for a long time, 7 years. And I had walked the path, finally gotten properly diagnosed, spent 2 years, really nourishing my body.
You were in Portland.
I was in Portland only for 9 months, but long enough to get diagnosed. But it was when I actually started seminary and when I started graduate school and when I started my interfaith center and I started walking my path that my my health really drastically improved, because I think there felt like there was an aspect of my health that was, the repression of who I was. I wasn't expressing and living from who I am.
So now we're up to the transformational piece. I mean, everything we've been talking about are the pieces that go into it. But leaving a relationship, there has to be a death of something in order for something to be reborn. It's just how it works in this reality. It's the way it works.
Yes.
So you're shedding a skin, you're peeling the onion.
Mm-hmm.
You know what? If you were to liken yourself to an onion, how many layers would you say have come off?
Oh, so many layers have come off. Layers of anger, layers of grief, layers of disappointment, layers of what the dream used to be, layers of love, because I really did love this person.
I still love my ex-husband, and he's passed away.
Yeah.
I mean, I never stopped loving him, but that wasn't what it was. It wasn't about not loving him. It was about I could not make this work so that I could stay in it and be who I was. It wasn't going to work. And and people had told me for a long time, you've tried everything. I don't know why you're not leaving. Well, I hadn't done the inner work yet. It was the way it was going.
Yeah.
So I'd started to do it. I think I started in a women's circle. We're like just 4 women that I just dearly, I'm so grateful for that they were there, because I got to just be who I was with those 4 women. And then it grew from there. But I did more of my work outside of it. You've done a lot of work inside. I've seen a lot of it.
A lot of work inside the marriage. But I also was in a relationship that could allow that. There was it wasn't so toxic that I had to get out and then do my work. It was I when I left the relationship, at least I can leave it. I felt like I left it with grace, and I left it with this person will always be my friend, and he will always be a piece of my family. We have a family together, and just because him and I cannot be in relationship anymore
in the same way
right. doesn't mean that we're actually no longer family, because we have our 2 children together. We're always going to be a family. We're always going to be connected, and that's great. He's a good person to be connected to that way. But in terms of a romantic relationship, somebody to honor me and somebody who is on the same path as me, that wasn't him anymore after 20 years.
And it's interesting because the generations have changed. I mean, my parents were married for 65 years. They were in a time when there was a lot of crisis going on, and within the family there was a lot of crisis because my sister was so ill. And they just worked through everything together. And that still is a valuable thing to have. And I don't want people to think that we're saying if your marriage isn't working or your relationship isn't working and you're not being able to be yourself, you need to just leave. That's not it at all, because you can. It's possible.
Yes.
You can work it out together if the other person is willing to do their own work in their own way.
Exactly.
It won't work to say, well, this will work if you do it my way. It's not going to work. We have to honor. Once we start honoring ourselves, then it sets up the scenario that they get to honor their self.
Yes.
And accept the way they're doing it. So it's a dance. It's just a real dance.
It is. And I happened to be in a relationship where the other person wasn't willing to do the work. And
Me
so
too.
and so it took, and so for years actually I was doing both the work for both of us to kind of keep everything together and make everybody happy.
Well, you weren't quite doing it for both of you, because you can't do it for anybody else.
But you know what I mean, though. But I was like going to the extra
you were
work.
Trying to. Do
extra
you know
hard.
why you were doing that? Why were you doing that?
I think some of it was being sick. I think there's a vulnerability in that. But I also think, I really loved and valued my family. And that was a really big piece for me.
And you didn't, is it possible that there was because I'm talking for myself here. I had a big fear. I didn't know if I could make it on my own.
Oh, absolutely.
So I would much rather fix him, and then I'd feel better. Ain't no fixing. It doesn't work like that.
Yeah, exactly.
So I want to shift this a little bit, because we've talked pretty much about marriage and relationships, but what about friendships? And what about leaving jobs?
Absolutely.
It's the same process.
It is. But then there's a piece in that, whether it's a relationship, whether it's a job, whether it's a career, where you actually grieve what you wish it would have been. That there's a lot of grief in what you want something to be, And when that doesn't work out, there's a lot of processing that has to go there, because it's this dance between allowing, your highest good and the universe and all of those pieces to come forward for you. But at the same time, we all have those little pieces. We want this to be this way, and we want this to be that way.
You bring that up, and I did this ceremony with you, where we released the dream that what might have been.
Maybe.
I don't know. We've done a lot of work together.
Yeah.
There is something, and I can do this with. I do this with anybody, whether it's a relationship with another person or it's a relationship with their job. There is that they can let go of the actual relationship, the actual job, the turmoil that's involved, the anger, the frustration that happens as that's pulling apart. But many times they don't let go of what the dream was. And so I'm really glad you brought that up. Don't let go of what might have been. And shamanically, there's a ritual that I do with people of letting that go. Because in the work I do, you don't necessarily have to relive what's going on.
Yes.
You just have to go through the motion, and the pattern sets itself up. And once you do it in one way, it'll start echoing through everything else.
Absolutely.
So when it comes to a job, now I never had a job that I left except being a wife. Never stopped being a mom. Never stop being a mom.
No, it never ends. Never ends.
Never ends. No,
endless job.
My son's living with me temporarily now, and it's fun because we're kind of building a relationship that's different. We get to live together, not as mother and son, although that kicks in once in a while. I have to step back every once in a while. I have to remind myself, wait, he's 32, he's not 2. I don't have to do this, But it is letting go of the role. So if you've been in a job where you had a job, I have a friend who was an administrator in an assisted living situation and suddenly lost the job. This consumed her days and nights, and it's an unwinding that happens, much like being in a marriage.
Yes,
it's
absolutely.
the same thing. So whatever you hope, how you think you're going to be, what you think you're going to be in 5 years, I mean, everybody should, I think now, I didn't then, but I do now, is to look at what are the preconceived notions we have in our head. What are we attached to about where we're going to be in 5 years? Because one thing you can count on, it's always changing.
Yes.
It's always going to change. And so things never quite work out like you think they're going to.
No, I agree with you with that. But the piece for me, the pieces that work out is when I listen to my inner guidance, when I listen to my inner spirit, and then just make that next step from that inner guidance and that inner spirit. And if I do that without getting attached to the big picture, without getting attached to the long run, those are the pieces that always work out the best for me.
Yeah, you said that so eloquently. They tell me to do things, or they suggest I do things a certain way, and I go, seriously? You seriously want me to do it like that? You seriously think that's going to work on the ground here? And sometimes I just say, no, I'm not doing it that way. And then usually I come back around and end up
do it that way.
Because what they suggested probably was the way to do it to begin with. But that's that inner guidance piece. And I believe that during this whole thing, you got to have a sense of humor. You got to have a sense of humor. If you can't laugh, if I couldn't laugh at myself at the way things were working out, I would have lost it, I think.
Yes, absolutely.
Because it's too easy to be serious.
It is too easy to be serious, and it's too easy to take relationships and jobs and all of those pieces seriously. It's a lot easier, though, to get anchored in your own soul and in your own spirit. And there's a lightness that's there, and a light that's there that you can always anchor into.
And I also believe that on the ground, that when you ask for it, I'm a big one in invoking when I say, I'm going to do this, or I want to do it this way, or I want to do it, that the universe will step in if it's in my spirit's best interest, and the right person will show up.
Absolutely.
At the right time. And some people say, well, I can't afford a counselor, and I can't afford, But I really do believe there's a lot of resources. Like I hold healing circles that people can come to and work on stuff. And it's one of the reasons I do it by donation, because I don't believe in keeping anybody from their spirit.
Yes.
I'm not the gatekeeper. If anything, I'm the gate opener, And so that they can come and start doing some of that inner work and looking at it and taking responsibility for their own choices. And you do some of the same work.
I do some of the same work.
But you do it differently.
I do it differently, but I do it, based kind of out of the world's religious traditions oftentimes. But mostly, I focus primarily on just connecting people to their own spirit, whatever that looks like for them and what that path looks like for them without, dogma or telling them how it needs to be. So, and then I'm like you, I do think all of my work is by love donation, because there's nobody that I would turn away.
No,
this is
no.
That
When it gets to some of the more advanced things, though, I do end up charging because I have to know that person's commitment is there.
Absolutely.
That's the way that goes. You connect them with their spirit. Unfortunately, the way I connect people with their spirit, sometimes it looks like a tiger. Sometimes sometimes it looks like a clam. It just depends on what's going on. The guiding spirits and teachers, I'm connecting with that energy that surrounds us all.
Yeah.
So it's a little different, but the same.
It is.
Same but different.
It's the same but different.
And whatever calls you. I had someone ask me, "Well, I just don't know where to start." And a lot of times, what I'll do is I'll tell them, "Go to a bookstore, walk through a bookstore, and just look at titles and kind of figure out what speaks to you, what grabs your attention, where am I supposed to go." That's what happened with the shamanic path for me. Some people have heard the story that I was in a bookstore in Portland and Pals. Pal's bookstore.
Yep, Pal's, yep.
And a book called Soul Retrieval. I went, "What the heck is that?" And put my hand up there, and I swear somebody shoved it into my hand.
Oh, wow. Wow, that's great.
And then we ended up the next weekend, I say we, a friend of mine who's done all the training I've done, ended up the next weekend back in Vegas. We found there was a basic workshop starting, and so we started that. And then we ended up actually studying with the woman who wrote that book.
That's so cool.
For several years, Sandra Ingerman. So, yeah.
That's really cool.
So I think the resource is there. Some people say, "Well, I have nobody." There's always a resource if you're willing to ask.
Yes.
And how would you suggest people ask? What would you suggest if somebody came to you in the place that you're in?
Oh,
as
in
far
the
as
place
you've gotten now, and you say, "I have nobody," what would you suggest they do?
Actually, I would start with exploring what your community, what your tribe might look like, and that means just getting out and trying different things in different places with different people. There's a lot of great, beautiful communities here in Las Vegas, and if you can, kind of sit into some of them.
Meetup is great for that. Meetup.com is great.
But
and that's where you start developing that muscle of, well, that was good, but this one wasn't so great.
Absolutely.
This is not what I want.
Absolutely. The other piece, though, for me, actually, at the very beginning of this journey, all I did was pick something every day, listen to my own spirit, and did something that brought me joy. That one little thing.
That's what I was talking about at the beginning.
Brought me, it could have been a cup of tea. But I had to consciously ask that question, what will bring me joy today, and listen for the answer. So I didn't even have to find a community. I didn't have to even get out of the house. It started with my own inner conversation with the divine, or, with spirit, or whatever you want to call that.
Yeah, I had days where, especially after the last relationship, I had days where I committed for a week only to do exactly what I had to do each day. If I had to pay a bill or make a phone call, if that's what absolutely had to happen that day, I would make it. And then I would spend the rest of the day if I wanted to take a nap. And some people say, "Well, I can't do that. I got to work." You can do it within the framework.
Yes.
You can do it within the framework of work.
Yes.
You can say, "I have to get this and this and this done," and start recognizing the things that you don't have to do now. Maybe you can take an extra 5 minutes, even if it's just 5 minutes at lunch.
Yes.
Because there is a situation, we have to pay our bills, and we have to drive our cars, and we have to get kids to school, and we have to punch a time clock, and we have to do all those things. Within the framework of what you have in that context, you can start looking at, if nothing else, here's what I like and here's what I don't like.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And maybe write that down. It just starts. I still am a believer. I end up saying this every week. People are going to say, "Well, that's your broken record." I think the biggest changes come in the smallest steps.
It comes in the smallest steps. And it comes incrementally, day by day, listening to your own guidance.
And it's being consistent with it.
Yes. Yes. And yeah.
It's always, what is the thing? 2 steps forward, 1 step back?
Yeah, I've done a few of those.
I've done a little cha-cha here and there, yeah. That's been the truth for my life. So what's up for you next? Where would you say you are now in this process?
I'm still at the spot where I'm reconnecting to who I am, what I like, where I my own voice in relationship. So one of the things that I had lost in that relationship was my own sense of self and my own voice and voicing my voice because it was never heard. And so I just stopped trying. And so now I'm learning how to voice myself in incremental steps with people.
So what would that sound like? Can you give an example?
I think a lot of it is just when something bothers me, to say it at the moment it bothers me.
Right.
That would be one example. Instead of letting that
build to anger,
or build to anger, or trying to brush it away, saying that didn't matter. It's not that big a deal. Because in the relationship I left, I was always picking and choosing where it was that I really had to make the efforts, and then I was throwing a lot of things under the rug.
I remember that place. You and I talked about that.
Yeah.
So what happened when you threw it under the rug?
It built into something that was pretty not happy, and built into someone that you really didn't want to live
Is that
with.
what I'm tripping over when I walk across the floor and I say that was lint?
No, that's my baggage I put under there.
Okay. I get
That's
it.
my baggage that I put under there. So that baggage is I've been doing a lot of work to try and heal those pieces of the relationship. But to know what to do now, what the new paradigm for me is now, that's a different, to actually do what I know I need to do is a different thing. It's a whole different relationship to self and to others.
And it's a lot of work.
Yeah.
At the time. And you lived through a lot of emotion. I lived through a lot of emotion. I lived through some things that I tried out that I went, well, that didn't work very well. But then there was the process of saying, well, that didn't work very well, so I'm going to move forward now.
Yeah.
I'm going to do something else. I'm not going to beat myself up for it.
It's a learning process.
It's a learning process, right? Yeah. So the transformation of that, it really is, when I look back to where I was in 2000 when I left. And I just finished a music CD called Where I Belong. It was no accident. The day after I left, the day after I actually moved out, they gave me the finished CD in my hand.
Oh, wow.
And that was definitely, I look back now and can see what a catalyst it was, because it was a bone of contention. And we never knew, I never knew what I was going to walk into, because it was a bone of contention. But where I was then and where I am now, it's up to me. And there are moments that it's scary.
Yeah.
It's just scary because it's me. I get to make the decisions of what's going on. I don't have anybody in my life right now that I can bounce that off of. Good friends, but when it comes down to the decision, it's just me.
Yeah, but it always is, even in a relationship.
It really is in a
always
relationship. Yeah, because it's going to, every choice brings something. So at Soul Sanctuary, which is on Russell and Russell and Pecos. I get it confused because somebody else I know has something on Sunset and Pecos. Russell and Pecos. What's the next thing that's happening?
Tonight, Reverend Mark is doing a class on the sacred masculine.
Yeah, and if you want to, I've picked up the book on that. I just started reading it, and if you guys want a good concept, this is something that needs to come up.
Yeah.
And it's part of that process that we were talking about, part of the transformation. So what time is that?
That's at 7 o'clock tonight.
At Russell and Pecos.
Yeah,
what's the address?
We're at 3450 East Russell Road and Suite 112. So
right.
Northeast corner of Pecos and Russell.
Yeah, that's right. That's what it is.
I had to think for a second. There.
How do I get there? Yeah. And if they want to get a hold of you?
The number is 702-748-7166, and you can also reach me at www.soulsanctuarylv, as in Las Vegas, .org, or www.karakeating.com.
Mm-hmm. I'm Lainey Risto, and it's you can reach me at 702-308-8464. I'm doing 2 full moon ceremonies this week.
Oh, wow.
Weekend. Yeah, I'm doing one Saturday night from 7 to 9, and then I'm doing one on Sunday from 5:30 to 8. So I ought to be really rummy by you know what I do, because I literally the spirit of the moon comes down and does that healing, and I'm just kind of rummy there for a while after that. The other thing is I am teaching a 2-day workshop, 16th and 17th, if anybody's interested on. It's actually beginning shamanic path, walking the shamanic path. First day is on journeying for yourself in core shamanism.
I'm coming.
I know, Kara's coming. In core shamanism, the second day is how to journey for other people. And that's the beginning of, that's the way you begin as far as understanding the energy that you're dealing with on the shamanic path. And in the fall, I'm going to start teaching in-depth courses
Fantastic.
like soul retrieval and death and dying and all those good things. Other than that, if you're in a relationship that's on its way, or you know it's something that healing that or leaving it, what of the other, is part of a transformation. Understand you're in a transformation. It's not the end of the world. It's going to take you to something bigger and better. Painful, happy, there'll be joy, there'll be laughter, there'll be all kinds of things. But look around and start going inward. Don't look at changing the outside. Look at changing the inside, because I'm a big believer in that's what's reflected outside of us.
Absolutely.
My world looks totally different than it did 14 years ago. Totally different. So if you get a chance, do that, or you can call Kara, or you can call me, and we'll tell you the trees that we ran into in the process of putting ourselves back together. Have a great week. See you next week. Mary Rose will be back. It'll be the full moon, so Mary Rose comes on, the psychic, and you can call in and ask some questions.
Well, that's
See you then.
fantastic.
Thanks so much for hanging out with us. Have a good week.
Here I am, standing at the door, looking back at